We are facing some really difficult economic times. Grocery prices are soaring, and we really don't know what the future holds for our economy. We have the advantage and opportunity to be able to look back into the past and use the lessons that have already been learned from our ancestors to be able to carry us through the uncertainty of the future. One of the first things that we need to do, and this is really the most important, is to change our entire mindset around the way that we view foods and how we are buying foods and putting together our meals. So, as we've been growing up, we have been surrounded by diet culture. And that is because we have an obesity epidemic in America, which has been brought on by the onset of convenience ultra processed foods. We have grown up in a world where food has been pretty accessible for a lot of people. And because we are so work oriented and are putting in more hours, working harder, doing more things, we have been heavily relying on convenience and processed foods. The problem with this is that the foods that we are taught to eat are low calorie foods that are not really very nutritious for us. Or if they are nutritious, they're not calorically dense. They're not the right foods that we need to be eating. When you are eating lower calorie foods, especially processed low calorie foods, you're not really providing your body with the nutrients that it needs. And you also have to eat a whole lot of low calorie foods, which gets really expensive. We need to be eating foods that are going to keep us fuller longer so we don't have to eat as much of them. Foods that are whole, unprocessed, and calorically dense are the foods that we really need to be focusing on if we are trying to eat healthy and save money. It's all about being efficient, and that's the way that they view food during the Great Depression. What food is calorically dense, nutritious, and cheap? When you eat these types of foods, not only is it a lot less expensive, but it also keeps you fuller longer. The more nutrients you are getting out of the foods, then the less hungry you're going to be. When you are lacking nutrients, your body is going to crave more food just to get those nutrients in you. So we really need to be choosing the right foods. Things like potatoes, rice, oats, beans, lentils, bananas, homemade breads, cornbread, sourdough breads, nuts and seeds are all really healthy foods that are very affordable. If we were to base our meals around these types of foods, then we can cut our grocery bill so much. It's also really important that we learn how to cook our foods. Cooking is an art form that has been lost over time. A lot of us did not grow up in an environment where we were taught to cook. And I mean really cook, cooking from scratch, not going out and buying pre-made ingredients like a pre-made pie crust and pie filling and assembling it and then baking it. That's not really cooking. That is still really expensive. Those things are also processed and is not really getting down to the roots and art of cooking. I'm talking about cooking where you make do with what you have. You use some very basic ingredients to create recipes, and this is something that is developed over time. It's not something that you're just going to learn how to do. It's really important that everyone begins to start learning how to cook, make the most basic thing, maybe learn how to bake some bread out of just flour, water, salt, yeast, a few other ingredients that is going to get you excited about cooking. It's hard because we are, as a culture, so busy. We are working and we tend to rely on these processed foods that are convenient and faster, and we don't necessarily have the time to cook anymore because we are working so much. However, it is really vital in our economy to learn how to cook with basic, fresh, whole ingredients. It is something that we need to start now in order to prepare for our future. During the Great Depression, people had a very limited supply of ingredients that they were able to purchase and grow, that they were really creative in the different recipes and ingredients that they made. A lot of these recipes and ingredients are still used today. I know in my family, every Christmas and Thanksgiving and holiday where we get together with family, my family always makes potato candy, which was a Great Depression recipe made from potatoes, sugar, and peanut butter. Those were staple ingredients back then, and they're delicious. Making soups with just mix and match ingredients, being able to do that and throw together a meal out of whatever you find in your pantry or whatever you can grow or afford is going to be a necessary skill to have. Learning how to garden is not only going to save you money in the long run, but it can also be a key to survival. If you do not have the money to go to the store, or for some reason, if we have supply chain issues. Just like with cooking, this is a skill that needs to be developed over time and is not something that you are going to know how to do right away. So it's really important to begin the process of learning how to garden and grow your own food. Even if you don't have a yard, growing something on your kitchen counter in the sunlight or in a pot outside is going to be extremely beneficial. Every single family had a garden during the Great Depression, and they grew a lot of their own food. They ate what they grew or could find. And a lot of times, if they didn't grow it, they didn't eat very well. A lot of our produce is really expensive in the store, and it's something that's pretty easy to be able to grow on your own. Things like leafy greens, herbs, peppers, tomatoes, squash, all of these things can be grown in a relatively small space. These can add important nutrients to these cheaper foods like beans and oats and rice that you can get at the store and make a really healthy, nutritious meal. Gardening also is really good for your physical and mental health. It gets you outside in the sun, in the soil, gets you physically active, mentally being able to just go to the garden and grow stuff is going to benefit you. As you're growing your own food and you have an abundance of food, learning how to preserve that food is another way to get through really difficult times. There are multiple different ways to preserve food. You can learn how to can, you can dehydrate things, you can just store certain things in like a cool, dry place like potatoes, apples, onions, garlic. You don't only have to preserve stuff that you grow, you can also buy things at the grocery store that's on sale and in season that you can preserve to use later throughout the year. This is also really important if we end up with any supply chain issues. You can still have access to these seasonal fruits and veggies while they are available and then preserve them for future use. And if you do have or grow extra, another really important thing is community. Being able to share with your neighbors and help each other out and trade and barter and sell extra things is a way that we can all work together in these difficult times. There are a lot of things that we own that we only use occasionally, things like lawnmowers and tools. We don't use them all the time. And if we got in a good relationship with neighbors and friends and family, then every household doesn't have to own these pieces of equipment. We can spend our money and time doing other things, and we can share and just be more community minded and help each other out. Food and cooking used to be a family affair. Children used to help. They would go out in the garden and pick produce for dinner. They would shell peas. They would help their parents cook. And children were involved. And this not only taught them how to cook, but also was a really good family time together. Today, we are so busy. Kids are at school all the time, and then they come home and they have extracurricular activities, soccer, ballet, and we don't really have a great family connection anymore, especially around food. A lot of families aren't even eating meals together anymore. It will become a lot easier to be able to cook your food from scratch or have a garden if you involve your children and your other family members and we do it together. It really is possible to greatly reduce your food budget and eat very affordably, even with today's crazy grocery prices. We just really have to change our mindset on food. We have to learn how to cook again. We need to grow our own food and be in control of what we are putting in our bodies and how we are interacting with our community and our families. I know that it can be really stressful to think about a future where we might not be able to get food in our bellies and feed our families. But implementing a lot of these practices, there's really nothing negative that can come from this lifestyle switch and adopting these lessons that have been passed down from previous generations who survived the Great Depression. Let me know if you guys are implementing any of these lessons in your daily life today. My husband's family is from rural Appalachia, and they still live this way today. They have a garden every year, they can food, they eat a lot of these Great Depression recipes, and it has been a really great learning experience to go and spend time with them and see how they live life.